So Donald Trump has essentially blown Kamala Harris and her backers out of the water in what was a landslide, right? So he's been elected again. He not only won the electoral college votes, he also won the popular vote, which means in totality, America has decided that Donald Trump is the way forward for them, right? So we're going to cover a little bit of the ripples that will come from this landslide, right? And it's interesting as well. So he says President Trump acknowledged Vice President Harris on her strength, professionalism, and tenacity throughout the campaign, and both leaders agreed on the importance of unifying the country. Again, like there's no politician going to come out and say we want disunity, right? Some have, to be honest, with the COVID stuff, but some really have. But hopefully now we can see the road is paved a little bit cleaner, right? And it's going to be important for people as well to track the timelines of these things, right? So in real time, instead of retrospectively or retroactively. So in real time, begin to start putting these pieces together. And I'll put a few of them together here in the next few minutes. But everyone be on to this, right? And pay attention to this stuff, because it's not just interesting for the world's sake or for humanity's sake, but it's specifically interesting for Irish people's sake, right? Because what happens in America, it bleeds downstream to Ireland, right? And that is what it is, like, and hopefully we can develop ourselves in a way over the next few years and decades that's not as prominent or as influential, right? But Trump is in, and you're beginning to see, at least verbally anyway, from people, and in some instances in action. We look at that in a minute, but you're starting to see a shift of the winds, right? And hopefully this will lead to better things for my people and for most people, because what goes on in the world now in one area, it affects other areas, right? So with the election of Trump, obviously he won't get into office until January. So there's a good period of time between then. A couple of months, anything can happen. But what we're seeing now is chess pieces beginning to move and words beginning to be spoke of a new direction, potentially, right? So this is from Japan Today. And the headline, Kremlin says, let's see if Trump victory will end Ukraine war, right? So we'll go down. This is from Peskov. Who is Peskov? So he's a Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, right? And he says, quote, we have repeatedly said that the US is able to contribute to the end of this conflict. This cannot be done overnight, but the US is capable of changing the trajectory of its foreign policy. Will this happen, and if so, how? We will see after the US president's inauguration in January. So we're starting to see leaders speak of peace now, right? And we'll see that again with Zelensky. This is from Vladimir Zelensky, and he said this is 8 hours ago. Quote, I had an excellent call with President Donald Trump and congratulated him on his historic landslide victory, and it was a landslide. His tremendous campaign made this result possible. I praised his family and team for their great work. We agreed to maintain close dialogue and advance our cooperation. Strong and unwavering US leadership is vital for the world and for a just peace. Great stuff. This is from The Guardian, and the headline is, this is from just a few hours ago, right? German government on brink of collapse after Olaf Scholz sacks finance minister. And we can see here that government insiders had suggested Donald Trump's electoral victory would focus minds in Berlin and force leaders of the Social Democrats, the Greens and the FDP to recognise the need for unity. But the discord and rancour in Berlin appears to show no signs of subsiding. Right, so you're starting to see waves, or the impact of the waves in Europe and further afield from the election of Trump. And now to Israel. If you remember, when Trump was taking out one of the Iran military leaders, he was supposed to do that in coordination with Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli forces, right? But at the last minute, Netanyahu pulled out, right? So he kind of it looked like he tried to leave Trump hanging a bit, right? But Trump went through with it anyway, and whatever. But here we have what looks like I'll read the headline, right? So, chaos in Tel Aviv. The situation is now exploding in Israel with reports of a potential military coup against Netanyahu following Galansta's missile. Again, I don't know the reality of on the ground there. I'm just reading headlines and having a look at things, right? So, but what we're looking at is a lot of things beginning to move pretty quickly across not just areas of conflict, but also stable enough nations, right? And I think you're going to continue to see this. And finally, this is also from The Guardian. So in Ireland, we bring it home now. Taoiseach announces Irish general election for the 29th of November. Right, so Ireland will hold a general election. Yeah. So Simon Harris said, "It is my intention to seek the dissolution of the Dáil on Friday, and I hope we will have polling day on 29th of November." So Harris made the announcement on the eve of a meeting of EU leaders in Budapest, where Donald Trump's election victory will be a key topic, with Ireland particularly concerned over the impact the new US president will have on the country's heavy reliance on US tech companies for employment and corporate tax. So you can see here, right, so meeting of EU leaders were on the eve, yeah. So he's going there, and they're all trying to cobble together what next action to be taken, right? Because these people have made it no secret that they were not in support of America trying to reclaim a bit of sovereignty and a bit of self-assertiveness, right? So we have it here in Ireland, and hopefully, with peace being bandied around now and spoken of, hopefully we can get a little bit of stability across the world, or across Western nations at least, right? And not, I suppose it has to be across the world at this point, right? Because I don't think there's any such thing now as things that just affect the West and then there's the rest, right? Because we've had our doors open to any and all across the world now by these politicians who are now look like they are falling apart, calling elections. And if you remember over the last 6 months or a year, there's been a lot of them that have decided that they're not going running again, right? Which tells me either they are nervous about being in power, or they are nervous of not getting elected themselves, right? And their, whatever reputation or legacy they have been tarnished, right? Or they're total criminals and they're fleeing the sinking ship, right? But either way, look, hopefully this leads to a bit of stability and peace, and in which case, with Ukraine obviously at the forefront, Ireland will stop collecting these people and bringing them in. There will be no need for it anymore, right? And they can all go home, and we can stop pumping billions of dead money, essentially, into a never-ending black hole of people's needs, right? That have no business here, right? We've put them up for long enough. They have done very, very well here. They have enjoyed very, very comfortable lives here. And hopefully now in the next few months, they can all go home again and rebuild their own countries and leave us to it. And what I would like to see is a reclaiming, a calling in of the debt of the amount of money that we're after pumping into Ukraine. We want that back, right? And the EU, we want that back too. All that money that was funneled over there for whatever reasons, and that should be investigated. Every cent of it should be investigated and accounted for, and it should be returned back to Ireland. Ireland should be demanding that, right? Because they're just throwing people's livelihoods into black holes. So hopefully the waves continue, and they will all meet and smash together, and hopefully a more creative, a more imaginative, and a more human perspective can take precedent then after this, right? Because the last few years have been an absolute disaster for nearly everybody, except those collecting money off of the disaster they've been implementing onto people, right? So positive things may be ahead, and I suppose essentially it's up to us to make it be a positive thing.